All right, welcome back here to the Jordy Culotta Show, driven and powered by Go Chevrolet. Appreciate David DeLucci for stopping by from the SEC Network, giving us a preview of college baseball, including around the league, man. The league's going to be murderer's row. It sounds like it starts here in Baton Rouge, though, as the number one team in all of the preseason polls. 4 preseason all-conference and all-American selections for the Tigers heading into tomorrow night's opener, and looking forward to catching it again on the radio dial with the voice, Chris Blair, who is back for another baseball season. This is actually where he got his start at LSU, as he was announced at around Christmas and started during baseball season. So heading into another one, and going to be a Thursday regular here with us, which we are very excited about on the Jordy Culotta Show. He's in the studio with us this morning, so good morning, voice. Good morning, CB. Good to see you, man.
Hey, man, it is good to see you, man. What's it been, like
It's been a long
5 or
time.
6 years?
It's been a minute.
Feels like I'm at a class reunion this morning, man.
It
This is
Yeah.
cool, man.
You hadn't changed a bit.
No, yeah, except gotten less hair and the beard is gray.
Don't I know about it, guys?
So that's why it's hats in the morning, man. Normally you wouldn't wear one inside. I know that's kind of the rule, but
hey, they're welcome here, man. We wear hats at the dinner table at this
hey,
spot.
dude, this is pretty cool. I got to tell you,
it.
I like this. Look, like Andy Warhol meets Foot Locker, But I like it. I mean, that's a compliment.
Such a good description.
I like the pop
that's a good
deco, whatever
analysis
they
of
call it, man. Spice it up a little bit. But hey, it's good to be here, man.
I appreciate you, man. A lot of cool stuff happening within the sporting world at LSU. Really, when you think about it, the baseball season back again.
Yeah, man.
I guess this is probably a cool period for you, because this is when you got your start at LSU. I remember you going into the baseball season without having called football and basketball and jumping into it. But now with this team and Jay Johnson, expectations high.
Yeah, no, there's no question. I mean, I think back on it. This is, Jordy, I'm going to say this is like the first time in at least 2 to 3 seasons I've been there on opening night, because of responsibilities with basketball. Yeah. Typically we've had it just so happens, had a road game, that opening weekend, and we leave on Friday. So I'm stoked to be there, number one, for opening night, because I can still remember, that February night. It was crisp. It was cool. Yeah. Cincinnati was in town. It was a really great crowd. It was a walk-off. Tigers get the win. And, it's interesting because, as you said, I didn't do football in 2015 and didn't do that basketball season, so I started with baseball. But as you know, and anybody that's watching or listening, I mean, that's really being baptized by fire. Absolutely. Because, LSU baseball this time of year, that's all anybody wants to talk about.
That's right.
So, yeah, it's going to be exciting to be back. And, my goodness, I was looking at, who had been, who Jay was working with. I don't know if it was, let's say, team 1, team 2, or it was just a mishmash of the players, because he's got so much talent. But it's been interesting to watch these scrimmages, who's where, and everybody guessing on opening night who's going to be at second, who's going to be in right field, who's the starter. As we know, found out it's going to be Skeens, but it's just it's exciting, man. In fact, it's an exciting weekend. I was talking to Kent Lowe yesterday, and you've heard me say it before. I've said it to you. I love that weekends start here in Baton Rouge, South Louisiana, certainly during Mardi Gras on Thursday.
Absolutely.
So tonight it gets started with Coach Mulkey and women's basketball. Then you got gymnastics tomorrow night against number 2 Florida. You got baseball opening up. Beth and softball have the Tiger Classic. Men's basketball at noon. I mean, you could literally bebop around venues this weekend. It's a great weekend to be on campus.
Without question. And take me a little bit back to baseball again here, because we just talked to David DeLucci about it. You're over there. You see the facility. You see what they have access to. How about bringing a guy like Wes Johnson down from the bigs? He's sitting on a team that's contending, leaves the team, comes down to Baton Rouge, and gets prepared here for year one. I don't know, Chris, you give good perspective here. You kind of seen it from the country standpoint. How strong is the brand to be able to attract a name like that, like they were able to pull?
It's amazing when it was announced last year. And I was talking to Ben McDonald last week, and Ben said to me, we were talking about the players and we were talking about the hype and excitement. He said, "Hey, let me tell you something. The fact that, as you said, Wes left a team that was at the top of Major League Baseball, where he had a ton of success." And he said, I knew him when he was at Mississippi State. I knew him when he was at Arkansas. He said, in a couple of years from now, if, in fact, LSU makes a bunch of runs to Omaha, and let's say they add another to the Intimidator, we're going to look back at Jay being able to bring Wes Johnson here to develop what you have to have, not only to win the SEC, but certainly to withstand the grind that is Omaha with elite pitching. And from all indications, the guys that they brought in who were super talented, the development with those guys has been key. And then look for the guys who we saw last year who, bless their hearts, man. I mean, they did a fantastic job just to piece it together last year. Yeah. But the steps that they have taken, the development they have taken, that's what Ben said to look for. And it's all attributed to Coach Johnson.
It was a move. I mean, people all around the SEC, all around college baseball, all around the bigs.
Definitely a shot across the bow in the SEC. They're not messing around.
That was a move.
But, that's the great thing about Jay is, I really enjoy working with him. I like being around him. And not to get off on a tangent, but Coach Kelly's similar in the fact that we're here to do one thing, and that is to bring championships to LSU. Yeah. And that means pretty much every waking moment there's something to do with that. And that certainly is the case with Jay Johnson. I mean, it is nonstop baseball. Last year, I wished him happy birthday. I said, "What'd you do for your birthday?" He said, "Well, I sat in my office at home. I didn't come to here and watch like 3 games. I got 4 or 5 screens on the wall, and I was watching Vanderbilt, and I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds like a blast on a birthday." But to him, that's great. But it's also getting work done. So, man, it's no surprise. I mean, Ben also said when Jay got hired, everybody that he knew in the business said, "Hey, look, you're not going to out-coach him, you're not going to outwork him, and you're not going to out-recruit him." No. So I think we're starting to see it. We saw it last year, but I think you're really starting to see it now.
Speaking of last year, when did you feel, and I'm changing a little direction here, but the football aspect of it, Brian Kelly, when did you feel the mark kind of hitting and saying, watch out now, this could be different as far as the leadership goes, and they may have found the right guy?
It's funny because, I don't know unless you work in it every day and you're around the people that, dedicate their lives to bringing championships and graduating student athletes. To me, it was during spring football when you would just take a visit over to football ops. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've said this before, if you saw anybody in that building, I could be standing up there waiting to meet with somebody and people were moving through the hallways. The look on their face, the movement of their body told me they had a purpose. Yeah. And they weren't coming over to chit-chat with old radio guy and shoot the breeze. It was good morning, good afternoon, and then they were moving. And I just got a sense then that there's not a lot of wasted effort, not a lot of wasted time in that building, and that to me was the first telltale sign. Mm-hmm. And then when you go to, I think more so than spring ball, because of baseball and basketball, I don't see a lot of it. And I've never seen a spring game at LSU because I've been doing baseball.
Wow, that's right. Yeah.
But, the fall camp, preseason, so to speak, I mean, that's when, to me, I thought, okay, everybody says 5 to 6 games they'll win this year. Schedule's going to be challenging, but I just, there was something I saw, and then as we got deeper into the season, and the stories coming out that there's a disconnect, and he doesn't fit in South Louisiana, and I'm like, these players want to run through walls for this guy, and he's so inspiring. Like you saw it if you watched any of LSU Gold, the behind the scenes stuff.
Sure.
I mean, the guy is. There's a system, and he's been doing it for 3 decades, and it works. Yeah. So all you got to do now is implant all of that experience, all of that knowledge, and put it in a place where you can get the top-notch athletes in the country. And what do you mean you're going to win 5 or 6 games? Like who? Like the national people who come up with this stuff, not just for LSU. And I'm not saying, hey, poor old LSU.
Sure.
I'm just saying they're not around much, man.
Right.
They're not at spring football. They're not at preseason. I'm there. Handful of times you'll see some guys come in for an hour or two. But for them to guess that, I just thought they're going to miss the mark. And, happily for us, it was true. I mean, it was really a surprising season.
You've had a chance to see some of these moments, but that moment that Alabama game provided for Tiger Stadium, you killed it, by the way. Your call was phenomenal. But just take me to that moment.
It was wild because, the first Alabama game I did was in 2016. And I was lucky enough, my late father was able to come down. He'd never been to Tiger Stadium. And it was, if you remember, man, it
10-0.
It was popping.
That was a war.
And, he told me then, after the game, I said, how was it? And he goes, they came out with my wife and kids out of the tunnel to go to their seats, and they were at the hospitality tent, enjoying the atmosphere. So they came in pretty close to kickoff. And, at that point, man, the fireworks and everything's going off. And he said it's like seeing the Grand Canyon for the first time. Like it's kind of, woo. Yeah. You came out of the tunnel and you just look up and this place is majestic. And then to have the game that it was. So that was, for an Alabama LSU game, that was the highlight experience. Yeah. And we lost 10-0. It was a great game. Uh-huh. So now you fast forward to this past year, and it's that same atmosphere. And the Tigers had some swagger, and, Kelly was giving those great speeches pregame, and then the guys just went out there and beat Alabama. And then to have the, whatever you want to say at the end to say we're going to win this thing and we're going to do it right now and go out and do it. Yeah. I mean, it was, there's.
What a night.
There's that. I don't like to speak in hyperbole, so I don't want to say it's the greatest moment ever. Because there's been some great moments here at LSU, but man, oh man.
In the discussion for sure.
Whoo, ain't no doubt. Top three.
You have a great passion for radio. I think that was the one thing that really kind of drew us together when we first met was your love for radio. Yeah. Man, that has changed a lot since I've met you. How have you viewed the change of media? How from your seat do you really kind of navigate where it's going? You're still obviously the play-by-play on radio, but where is media going in your point of view?
Well, I think the good thing is that there's more access to it. You know what I mean? The technology's there that, people can consume it when they want to consume it, And there's, again, there's, to me, for live sports anyway, whether it's radio or television, I think from a programming standpoint, for a game, that's kind of must see.
Yeah.
Sure, there are people that DVR a game. They don't tell me the score. Don't tell me the score. I'm going to watch it tonight. But that's few and far between. Most people know tip-offs at noon, kickoffs at 1:30. That time, whether it's consuming it, listening, or watching, or both, you kind of got to be there. But outside of that, from a programming standpoint, people consume it when they want to consume it. I'm the same way. There are certain podcasts that I listen to. There are certain live shows that I listen to religiously. I think just the fact that you got, if in this day and age, if you're going to be a content creator, I think being able to do both of those, like offering it live, hate to bring up Howard Stern, but, before podcasts were what they were, when he moved to Sirius Satellite, the deal was we're going to do a live show in the morning because, A, that's what we've always done, and people go to work counting on it. Yeah. Secondly, it's going to be available throughout the day, and then it was available on demand. So, I think that's kind of where we are in media. I think the traditional rules are kind of out the window. But I think and I've always said this, and again, my dad was a big believer in this, man, from the time I was a kid. When he ran his stations, it was always you had to be aware of what's down the road. Yep. And if you ever get stuck in the fact that, well, I like records, I don't want to play CDs, then you're going to get left behind. Yeah. So, and then it went from CDs to automation to computers. And so he always kind of said you have to do that or you're going to find yourself farther and farther behind the competition. So I think it's a changing landscape, but, anybody can do a podcast. And that doesn't say that anybody does a good one.
Right.
But anybody can do it. Yeah. And I've always said when people say, how do you, be a play-by-play announcer, there's a couple of things that I think you have to be born with. But the biggest thing is getting reps and doing it.
That's right.
Whether you're calling, rec league or high school. I spent 10 years calling high school games and loved every second of it. Yeah. But you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of games where you eventually kind of get your rhythm and your, the way you do things. I think the same thing is for anything in media. You got to get reps, and if it starts out with you doing a podcast with a microphone and a laptop, and you can get it out there, and then you can add some cameras, and then you can add some graphics, and then you can do what Jordy Culotta does on a daily basis. So I just think you got to get out there and do it. But I think access to do it is way different than it was even really 5 years ago.
And speaking of access, I found myself watching the YouTube feed of your live.
Man, I got to tell you that is the.
Well, I saw your numbers and I thought to myself, I'm in the majority.
Jim Nickel, who does spotting for us, he's always said, "Are you kidding me?" that's people watching that. And I said, I can't explain it. You know, it was funny because we started tinkering with that at baseball.
I don't mean to interrupt, but were you just taking your phone and putting it up against the glass and going live? Because that's what it looked like.
The first time we started doing it was the 17 in Omaha, and that was my phone.
Right.
Now, we didn't have it live streaming out, but obviously we were putting it out quickly.
Yeah.
And then there was this great technology called a Mevo camera, which now is like it's like the big
1890s.
It's like the big wooden cabinet TV now, right? But at the time, it allowed you to do some pretty cool stuff, and we started doing it live.
Right.
And now we've kind of, again, with the technology, we've gotten a little more nimble, some smaller stuff that does a lot of stuff. Like we'll have the full in booth broadcast tomorrow night for baseball, but it's amazing that between Facebook Live and YouTube Live through, you know, LSU's channel, which, again, thanks LSU for letting us, you know, put that. They've got a big platform. But the number of people that watch it is kind of crazy because it's just ain't much to look at, man. But maybe some people are just scrolling through and, hey, what's the score?
Catches
or what?
you.
Yeah,
it catches you, man. And you get you know what it did for me was it gives you an idea of behind the scenes of like kind of what it takes to get this thing
how the sausage
blasted
is made
out into the world.
Like there's people running around like the chickens with their heads cut off, man.
Running around, it's wild. You mentioned gold, the LSU gold thing, and it has been just. I said during football season, it was the best relationship I had in the building. You know, you can know people over there, you can get information, you can talk to people about players, about what's going on. If you just watch LSU Gold, you learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool because you had this symbiotic relationship where the coaches were buying in because it's a great piece for recruiting.
Sure.
You know, the whole program, the whole series, but also just snippets that obviously we all see on social media. So the buy-in from coaches is huge because they give you that access that, you know, I get it. A lot of times they don't want cameras around. And I think there are some spots where cameras don't need to be around. But you get a lot of access that previously never would have gotten. And then the storytelling job that the staff does is, I mean, it's good. The music, you know, sometimes narration, the interviews, the highlights. I thought they put it together nicely, and I started watching it truly as a fan because I'd heard about LSU. It's coming. Yeah. We need you to help with some things. Okay, you know, whatever. Yeah, sure. Again, it's hard. It wasn't tangible to me.
Yeah.
And then I just said, well, let me see what this is about, and I started with, you know, the football series. Which went back to preseason. And, hey, man, I'm in the building. I get to go to football practice.
Right.
And yet I still, same way you were, I was like, oh, wow, that's an interesting story. I didn't know about this student-athlete or I didn't know about this member of the coaching staff. So, you know, the gymnastics one that's going on now, I think the climb is really good because I think a lot of people, I had Ashley Natt on a podcast yesterday, and I was saying, you know, a lot of times we get caught up in wins and losses, you know, and you lose – quote unquote, to Auburn on the road, but then you go look at that score, it's the highest one that they've had this year. That's what matters. Yeah. Good, they want to win, but I thought the climb kind of shows you like what they're really pushing towards and what they're aiming for as gymnasts at LSU. So I think it's a great series, and the people do a lot of great work, and hopefully it just keeps getting bigger and better.
Mulkey Mania is for real.
Ooh, man, ain't no doubt. Well, for good reason, you know.
What do you make of the freight train she has created in just a year and a half?
I guess I don't want to say this to sound.
You expected it because I did.
Yeah,
I did too.
Yeah, no, I don't know that I expected, you know,
top three
the
in the
success
country.
that quick, just because it's hard to do. You know, I've seen her in the building a couple times before the season started, and it was, you know, hey, we got some good pieces. I mean, you've heard it. We got to piece it together. That's kind of the theme of this year. And I remember telling Patrick Wright, he's seen a lot of women's basketball at LSU in 34 years, and he's seen some really good teams. And I remember telling him, like, late November, early December, I said, you know, for all these new pieces, man, these ladies look like they've played together for a while.
Yeah.
There's like the gel, you know, you hear that a lot.
Yeah.
The gel of a team. Yeah. They were able to, you know, and credit the staff and credit those players to be able to do that as quick as they have. And you know, they had a setback against a great team. There's no other way around it with South Carolina and what Dawn Staley's put together over there. And I think Kim put it best after the game. You know, there's South Carolina right now, and there's everybody else, and that's where we're wanting to be.
Sure.
And as Dawn Staley then also said, Kim and LSU's well on their way ahead of schedule.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, there's no surprise. And I hope people go out tonight. I think Coach Starkey, he's just a solid dude, man. Good coach, but a solid guy. I think, don't get me wrong on this, and if I am, I apologize, but I think for the students that show up tonight for the Ole Miss game, he and his wife, who is a strong and cancer survivor, are going to donate something towards the K-Yow Fund.
Oh, wow.
So, so they're going to match, I think, $1.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know all the details.
That's right.
But
It is.
Is it
They're
$1?
matching $1, yeah.
So I encourage the students to go out there because, hey, you're going to see a great team play, and secondly, you're going to go help a great cause.
Oh, that'd be great. And I second what you say. Coach Starkey, they don't make him any better, man. He's a great dude.
Yeah.
Last one, I'll get you out of here, and it's great to see you. Thanks for stopping by and looking forward to our Thursday conversations with the voice of LSU sports, Chris Blair, who's going to be in here. What's preparation like for a new season? So you start baseball season tomorrow. You're in the middle of basketball season. You didn't get a break from football to basketball. You're breaking in a new sport tomorrow night. How does preparation work for that?
I think I told you before, man. I'm just trying not to say baseball court and basketball field on Saturday.
Yeah, right.
But it helps that I get to know Bill Franquez pretty good. There's certain people in the building that you needed to learn really quick and get on your side. And Kent Lowe is one, and Bill Franquez is the other. So they help me, try to sound like I got some type of handle on things for opening night. Truth of the matter is, we'll get to mid-March where I really will know the nuances of each player and maybe even more so their backstory. Because it's just I don't have the time to do that. I mean, I keep up with it, and there's some prep done beforehand, but then you just got to get in it.
Yeah.
And eventually, we'll start tomorrow night. But just excited, and it helps when your team is loaded as Jay has this year. I mean, there's been story after story after story since the end of last season. And the acquisition of the 2 new assistant coaches, plus the transfers that came in, plus the signees that didn't go to the draft. So it helps that LSU baseball is covered the way it is. One of the things I enjoy most, I have friends who work at Kentucky, I have friends who work at Georgia, and obviously friends at Georgia Southern where I spent 10 years. And on Jay Johnson's Media Day, which is held in January, I always take a picture of the room because there's not a place on the planet for college baseball. Yes, I mean it is literally like the Dodgers are holding the first team meeting with the media. So, and I always send it to them, and they're like, "Man, we ain't got that here, bro. There ain't that many people."
I mean, for what it has created, and you've traveled to conference, you've seen the new facilities on everybody's campus, right?
Yeah.
And I think you can directly correlate that back to Skip. What he does, was doing in the 90s.
Yeah, I think
it's still different. LSU baseball it's Alabama football and Kentucky basketball, right?
Yeah. Oh, I think there's no question. I mean, you can look. Ron Polk. I want to give Coach Polk a lot of credit for helping lift college baseball, certainly SEC baseball at Mississippi State. We were up there a week or so ago. They told us he's getting a statue now at Duty Noble. I think they're going to do it this spring at some point, which is deservedly so. But, yeah, I think Coach Polk and Coach Burtman. But I think LSU and the success that Skip had here is why LSU is the crown jewel of college baseball. And it's why that many people with cameras and microphones show up whenever Jay Johnson's talking about anything. So it's a special place, man. There's really no place like it. I got asked this morning, I do a show in Shreveport every week, and they asked me this morning, do you remember that first night? Doing it at the box. And I said, boy, do I ever, man, because it was, you talk about butterflies.
Hell yeah.
But the one thing I do remember that first year that I took away, and everybody had told me how big LSU baseball was, the fact that year, because I think the team, I don't know if you knew this, Kim Mulkey's son played here at LSU. but Kramer and Cole and that crew in both 16 and 17, I think were really loved by the fans.
They were.
And I'd go there on a Tuesday night to play whoever, and 7,000-8,000 actual people, not tickets sold. They were in the place on a Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Which that just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen everywhere. It really doesn't happen in a lot of places.
I agree. Speaking of chemistry, phenomenal chemistry with Doug and the crew in football season. Happy birthday to Doug.
Yesterday. Happy birthday, Doug.
Doug Thompson on the crew with baseball.
Uncle
phenomenal. Duder. We are biased. I think your broadcast partner in basketball, you and Brady, do a phenomenal job. I don't think people understand how hard of that job it is, and y'all make that sound very, very easy.
Well, I mean, he makes it easy, man. Yeah. I mean, he's just. I mean, is he not just the coolest dude on the planet?
What people I don't think understand is that who he is on the radio is exactly
who he
is off of the air.
Yeah, there's no different voice.
Right.
There's no different anything.
Right.
We went out to dinner with some of his old buddies from Mississippi State when he was there.
Wow.
And to hear them talk about it was about a 2-hour dinner we had. And, shocking, Richard Williams, who's John's buddy, who he coached with at Mississippi State, another Final Four coach, takes us to this place, man. And normally when I go with John Brady and he picks a spot, it doesn't matter if the line's out the door like the Stones are in town. We walk in, Coach Brady, and they drop a table out of the ceiling, and they find a place for him. Well, Richard throws out the carpet, so to speak, and we have the restaurant to ourselves.
Wow.
There's 5 of us.
Wow.
And I'm just sitting there along for the ride, listening to them tell stories. And the one thing about it, going back to what you said about John, is that he's seen the way we see him everywhere. That's the way he's seen in Starkville. I told Kent, you're going to have to get a security barrier here at the hump. We got a game to do. And there are people from Mississippi State coming over, and, that's just the impact he's had on people.
No doubt about it.
So, I'm blessed to have him when he's in town. He's quite the traveler these days.
You feel that my son is now, and you have a son that's gone through athletics and now kind of getting on the college scene, but my son is in 6th grade, and he goes down to string music basketball camp in Mississippi, right there at Summit, in Summit, Mississippi. And Brady, when he walks in there, it is as if royalty walks in the room. I mean, just because of the lifelong relationships of basketball people that have come through there, and what he means to that part of the basketball world is, I think we underestimate it. People that haven't seen it, like you've seen it, I've seen it, you don't really get his impact
and the people that hold him in high regard in basketball circles. And I've said it a bunch, and I'll continue to say it. What makes John Brady great on the radio, and what makes it a thrill for me, is that he can sit there and talk with Richard Williams. He can talk with Coach McMahon. He can talk with Coach Jans, who he visited with. Buzz Williams last weekend. He and Coach Williams had a conversation, and they can talk high-level stuff, dude. I mean, stuff I don't even know, right? But when he gets on the radio, in his natural way, he's able to explain it so that everybody can understand. I mean, people who know basketball and people who are just there rooting for the Tigers, he can explain why things are working and why they aren't. And that, to me, is his gift. It's an extremely colorful picture that y'all paint through the radio. Man. I mean, and that is very, very Nobody has more fun on the road than Coach Brady and I, including this past trip to Athens, Georgia. And nothing can hold y'all down. No, it doesn't matter. No. It's great to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks
every
for
Thursday,
having me on,
man.
dude.
Every Thursday. Man. Look, people in the chat are looking forward to it. A lot of people are loving this conversation. We are too. So, Chris Blair, The Voice, make sure and tune in tomorrow night. It'll be an active weekend. So, how does your weekend work? Do you call Saturday? Yeah, I'll be there Friday, Saturday basketball, because there's only a half-hour gap. Yep. And then I'll be back on Sunday. And, again, I need to promote. Shameless plug. Yeah. I'm sure you won't be offended. No. You're used to that, right? Yeah, right. Well, you got to use the platform, man. No, LSU Sports mobile app, man, is pretty cool. We get a lot of people who download the app, and it's really easy now. Basically, everybody can pause their TV, and you can sync the two. Oh, and nice. So anyway, if you're out running around this weekend, you can listen in the car with the mobile app. Obviously, you can listen on the radio as well, but just wanted to plug the LSU Sports mobile app if you haven't signed up for it. A lot of cool stuff beyond radio, but you can always listen to a game with one click of the button whenever the Tigers tip it off, kick it off, throw the first pitch in the sports that we cover on the air. You'll get a notification. All you got to do is hit one button, and there you are. LSU Tigers Voice is where you hit him on social media. He'll be here every Thursday, and we're looking forward to it. Chris Blair. We'll be back and close out the show. Compliments of Go Chevrolet.